Hey everybody, so I'm going to show you how to make this n-fold flower in GeoGebra Classic 5. And to make it, we're going to use all kinds of fun things like parabolas and hyperbolas and circle inversion. So let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is make that ring of outer circles, and there's a number of different ways you can approach this, but I think maybe the easiest way is to start with an n-sided polygon. So I'm going to type point A equals 0, 0, point B equals 1, 0, and then I'm going to create a slider that's an integer from 7 to 20. And then I'm going to grab my regular polygon tool and I'm going to click on A, then B, and I want n vertices. And I'm going to make the opacity, color opacity of this polygon 0 so that when I click inside it, it doesn't select it. So let me zoom in. All right, next I'm going to grab my perpendicular bisector tool and I'm going to put one in between these 2 points and one in between these 2 points. And then I'm going to grab my intersect tool and put in my center and this midpoint, and I'm going to put in that very first circle that's going to define my ring of outer circles. Next, I want these 2 points. And now I want to point on this line that's equidistant from this point and this line. And the way we're going to do that is with a parabola, because by definition, a parabola is the set of all points that's the same distance from a point and a line. So I can click on the point and then the line, and it gives me that parabola. So all these points are the same distance from this point and this line. I'm going to grab my intersect tool. We just want the one point that crosses this line, because now when I put in that circle, it's going to be perfectly tangent to that line. Cool. So I grabbed my intersect tool and I put in that point of tangency. I'm going to do that again. So I put in this point here and I'm going to put in a parabola here, and let me zoom in with my scroll wheel. And I want this point, this circle, and this point. So notice I'm using my intersect tool, not the point tool, to put in all those points, because this is an exact construction, not approximate. Okay, so what's left to do? I've got to put in some arcs where I have circles. I've got to put in a line segment, and I want to put in a little circle that's going to live on the outside here. So the next circle I put in is just a guide circle. So this is where my pattern is going to live. It's going to fit it perfectly inside this circle. And so to construct this little circle that's going to live in between my outer ring of circles, I've got to use circle inversion and hyperbolas. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reflect about circle, this larger circle about the outer circle. And so that gives me this big circle out here. Then I want to use my midpoint or center tool to click on that circle and get its center. And then I'm going to put in a hyperbola with its foci at the centers of these 2 circles. So this circle and this big circle. So hyperbola tool, I select one focus and then the other focus. And then I want to select this point where the 2 circles are tangent. And so that gives me all the points that are the difference of distances from those 2 points. But again, we only care about one of them. We want this one, and I want to put in this intersection, and that gives me this circle. So that would be tangent to 3 circles if I had another one outside, but we want the one on the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another circle inversion, reflect about circle, to move this circle back inside. And so now I've got it. Cool. So now we just want those arcs. So I'm going to grab my, well, first I need points on the other side. So I grab my reflect about line tool and I want to reflect this point over this line, this point over that line, and this point over that line. And I want my circle, circular arc tool. And this is always going to go in a counterclockwise direction. So I select the center, beginning of my arc, end of my arc, center, beginning of arc, end of arc, center, beginning of arc, end of arc. And it's kind of hard to see those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide those circles. And I'm going to hide this one and this one, and I'll go ahead and hide those parabolas and that hyperbola. All right, so we're almost there. All we're missing is a line segment. So I'm going to grab my segment tool and I want a line segment from here to here. And I want a sequence now of rotations of these things. So I'm going to type sequence, rotate, in curly brackets, all the things I'm going to rotate by 2 pi I over n about my center point h, where I varies from 0 to n minus 1. So let's see, what are all the names of the things I'm going to rotate? E underscore 1, F underscore 1, G underscore 1, D underscore 1, and then finally my line segment A. And so that's my sequence. I'm going to hit enter. I can hide all these conics, hide all these points, hide my segments, and I'm not going to hide my polygon yet until I've played with my slider and dragged it all the way up, because it'll come back. All right, oh, and I can hide my lines. So there we've got it. So I'm using my scroll wheel to zoom out. And we've got our N-fold flower. Now, if, like me, you want to export this to manipulate in Illustrator or Photoshop, or you want to send it to a laser cutter, right now, if I were to export this as an SVG, it would just be the line. But if I want my lines to have a thickness, I need to do that in Illustrator. So typically what I do is I just export as a PDF. So I'm going to hide my slider, and I'm going to file, export, graphics view as picture, and you can select PDF here. If you want like puzzle pieces, you can do SVG from here, but I'm going to manipulate in Illustrator, so I export as a PDF, and that's the native Adobe Illustrator format. So then you click Save, and you'll have it. All right, thanks so much.